Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello there, everybody. How you doing? All right, so we're here today. This is a little chat that some of you may have seen over on Paul Capaldi's channel yesterday. This is a chat between him and I, but this one here has an extra about 12 to 15 minutes at the beginning. That was prior to Paul hitting the broadcast button, so you guys can see here an extra, like I said, about 12 or 15 minutes before we actually went live. So there's a little extra footage here. We're talking about several different things. Obviously, $50 million bullet. We talked about Scott Davis. The fact that one of the Scott Davis videos is trending very highly on my channel right now. It's coming in 7th at this current time. It's coming in 7th, right underneath my interview with Steve Moore, retired FBI agent. And so that was also, I talked a little bit about that and talked a little bit about that case. And him and I just talked about Ken Kratz and Wisconsin. And we got to talking about the Packers and why, what brought everybody's attention to Wisconsin and, that sort of thing. And so I talk about how I think it's a kind of a mixture of factors, obviously. But for those who are true crime minded, there are definitely multiple things to draw one in. So him and I have a bunch of chat about a bunch of different things. So, without further ado, here we go. I'll go ahead and get on to it, and we'll see you here at the end. So, see you in a minute. I agree. That's why I put that clip of Bachi, in where he's talking about that. And I'm like, yeah, I see the point he's making. I mean, there was a lot of bubblegummy crap for a while. But, shows like Married with Children, man, that show is just immortal, dude, for the ages. It was ahead of its time. Nobody had done that yet. Taking such a, really kind of critical but funny look at kind of the condition of middle-class America at the time. And, it was interesting. I think that's why I did so well.
Yeah, I would, I do actually know that. I have watched that Married with Children. I remember when it was on and used to watch it a lot.
Yeah.
I do get the sense that for some people there's a lot of American sameness, story plot and characters and stuff. Have you seen that film Dolomite?
No, I've been meaning to watch it. I forgot about that.
It's really good. There's one scene where they go to this cinema and they watch a supposed comedy of the day, but the whole audience there is white, and because they're four black dudes, they just don't get the sense of humor.
Oh, okay.
And then when they're filming Dolomite, and the whole of the black community absolutely love what they're watching, and the cinema house owner can't understand. Is this meant to be funny or what?
Right.
And just doesn't get it.
Right. Different living styles, living conditions, different perceptions of humor. I mean, it's,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, right. I'll be honest with you. I probably miss quite a lot of what Charlie Berens does. It doesn't make sense to me. The bit that does, is absolutely brilliant. And maybe if I had even more of an idea as to what Wisconsin humor is all about.
Well, I don't know. Charlie has a similar attitude as the Scots, and I just did a video on my other channel, but he's really kind of taking a kind of honest but also somewhat taking the piss out of being a Wisconsinite or a Midwestern Midwesterner in the United States, essentially.
Absolutely.
Right? And so he's doing that, and he's taking that irreverent kind of look at himself and the community that he grew up in, and he's finding funny aspects to it, and so hey, he's not doing bad. He's got quite a following over there
Yeah,
at the Manitowoc Minute. So
yeah, he would actually say that his character Charlie is based on several people that he knows, but one or two in particular.
right. Obviously, him as a kid, I would think the whole reason he wears the duck jacket. So I got to imagine that, like when we used to see him sitting there reporting the Manitowoc Minute, kind of like he used to do.
Yeah.
He's kind of gotten away from that now. He's getting a bit more free form with his video style now. But back when he used to sit there, like if it was a news broadcast for 2 minutes, he had that kind of shy, kind of reluctant, kind of like way of talking, like it sounds like he's unsure of himself, kind of thing. Like it's one of his personas, and like I said, it's one he does well, and I think that's basically supposed to be like adolescent Charlie, so.
So leave that fucking button alone, Capaldi.
Well, I'm just letting you know. That way everybody can see both of us, and it's so.
So I've got some interesting questions to ask you.
Yeah.
I
Let's
suppose
make sure we plug the $50 million bullet Facebook group and the Tickled Films group. That way we can push some attention David Starr's way.
Well, that's fine, because we can start off with that, and I can touch on that particular question, and that is, why should somebody like myself, who is 3,600 miles away from Wisconsin, and I don't know you're about 2,000 miles away from Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think that's actually about right, because it's so far north, and I'm so far south.
Why are we so interested in what's going on in Wisconsin?
Well, yeah, okay. That's a question that takes a more than a minute to answer.
Well, it's actually a false question, because it's not just Wisconsin we're interested in. It's wrongful convictions everywhere, because we're just as interested in
I was going to answer in a way of, well, being into true crime is kind of where it started, and having an interest in that, and then but I had a similar long answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's kick off with that. And if you're ready, I'll introduce you. Okay.
I've already been recording for a while now, so.
No worries. Okay. Well, good evening from not so sunny Scotland today, and very cold. It's about 4 degrees centigrade, which is just above freezing here. I know you've got a different system over there. I can't remember quite what it is, but anyway.
No, sorry.
It's temperature, but it's not as we know it this side of the Atlantic.
It's cooling down here, but it's still pretty nice because it's Southern California. But,
yeah, you've not got your air conditioning on.
No.
I hope not, because you've got a bloody big flag.
Actually, I want to go turn it on just so we can watch it billow. But anyway.
Yeah, and what is that flag behind you?
That is the Scottish the flag of Scottish royalty, actually. Or at least that's what made me want it. The video I was watching was talking about that. But the interesting thing about it is that it's actually no longer owned by the Scottish people. That because when James the First and Sixth became king of Britain, then that it's like it transferred ownership over to the UK or the British or whatever. So it's interesting. Somebody was explaining how it's like technically not fully legal to fly this banner, and anyway, some whatever. But then again, I watched a recent Glasgow march, like a unity march or type thing, and I saw them just speckled throughout the crowds, so I knew there was a lot of people there that had them. So obviously They're not cracking down on that rule. So
No, it's called the lion rampant.
the lion rampant. Okay.
Yes, yeah, and you're right. The official
Let's let everybody have a
Scotland
look.
flag.
Here you go, folks.
No, hey, there's definitely no bold spot there, dude.
Nope. Nope. I got.
There's definitely no bold spot there.
Full head of hair. I may have this stuff going on here, but hey,
Yeah, the official Scotland flag is the little one that's hidden in the corner there.
Well, yeah, you can barely kind of see it over there.
It's called the saltire.
The what? The saltire?
The saltire, yes. And that combined with the flags of England and Wales makes up the Union Jack.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know, the red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
And the reason it's the shape that it is because of the flags. Anyway, it's nice to catch up with you. First question then. Well, for those of you that have tuned into Erekose's filming of it some point in the future, because he's a Time Lord.
Sorry, hold on a second. Hello, Sharon. Thank you for the flag, by the way. Just got YouTube open on my phone so I could manage comments here. Sorry, I don't have my two monitors going, folks, so I couldn't see what you were saying. Now I can. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Yep, okay. Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Crunch Island is about 2,000 miles away from Wisconsin. I'm even further, here in sunny Scotland.
I'll agree with you that it may be about 2,000 miles away from Wisconsin, but as to your second comment, anyways, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying I'm about 3,600 miles away. It's.
Well, I said I did say about, so I'll grant for 36. That's fine. Could.
So you're questioning the fact.
I'm just questioning the direction in which
Crunch Island
is from Wisconsin. I'm saying it's east. You're trying to imply it's west, and that's where we are butting heads here.
No. You.
Need I remind you?
Geographically,
my client gave me this, from the Crunchberry Vineyards, and you can see how he is dressed, folks. They don't dress like that in California, folks. Sorry.
Oh, they do. I've seen you in your kilt. So anyway, cutting to the chase. So I am 3,600 miles away. You're about 2,200 miles away. Why such interest in Wisconsin?
Well, I didn't really have much previously, but previous to 3.5, almost 4 years ago now. We're about 3 months shy of 4 years. There's a couple things. I mean, let's first off start out with Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers. I mean, those names in the 90s, in the, late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, those things were huge. And now there's Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, and they're still huge. But, I remember being a youngster, the era of Brett Favre and the Packers, and watching Brett Favre, tough as nails, gritting games out, on the field and stuff, and being very impressed, with that. And so that makes a name for Wisconsin. It gives you, you have an awareness of Wisconsin because of that. You know what I mean? Because they've won quite a few Super Bowls and that sort of thing. And they make the playoffs consistently. They're competitive pretty much year in and year out. So they're a football powerhouse. And so, like I said, your attention gets drawn to Wisconsin that way. For me also, I have a huge interest in true crime. Would I have gotten as interested in Wisconsin as I am now if I didn't have an interest in true crime? Probably not. But because I do have an interest in true crime, when Netflix came out with a documentary called Making a Murderer, I checked it out. Just like when they came out with one called The Staircase.
Yep.
I checked it out. Just like when they came out with one called Exhibit A.
Yep.
I checked it out. And many others. You know, that's what I have an interest in. So that then drew my eyes to Wisconsin. Because after watching the documentary, Making a Murderer, I, at the time, immediately felt maybe that Stephen Avery did it. But I'll never know because this investigation's crap. And that's the way I felt at the time, immediately after watching the documentary. Before I started digging into documents and all that sort of stuff. I now have basically the same opinion that it's going to be hard to prove Stephen Avery was, you know, given a raw deal because the system is committed to perpetuating the lie. And that's kind of the scary part of it. But it was seeing what was going on and Making a Murderer, being pissed off that if he is, because like I said, in that mindset I was in, I was like, if he is guilty, I'm pissed off that these guys messed this up and made this so questionable. If he actually did it, why would they have polluted this case so much if he actually did this and jeopardized the conviction? So I was looking at it that way. And then I was like, but what if he didn't do it? What if it's just like before? You know? What if it's the same thing again? And look at all the little coincidences involved. I mean, it's really difficult to believe those are harmless. And then I started digging into the documents and seeing more dirt. And seeing kind of more and more, as you've been reporting lately, the details of the Ken Kratz sexting scandal and all that sort of stuff. And just going, this is like just a total shit show in Wisconsin. Like, I mean, what is going on here? And then we have recently Len Kaczynski. That guy was harassing a court clerk. He was utterly, completely harassing this girl. And, dude, coming in and staring at her for 45 minutes with a little cat toy going meow, meow, meow. Can you imagine how uncomfortable of a 45 minutes that would have been? I mean, and then to find out he gets let off with, it should have been 6 months, gets no jail time, and they're already lining up public defender cases for him. And it's just like, what's wrong here? You're talking about how that kind of disturbing behavior proves that Stephen Avery is guilty, and yet here when you see it displayed by Len Kaczynski or somebody involved in the legal system there, it's a little pat on the wrist. So that's some of the disturbing factors. Those are just a couple of the ones that jumped up at this moment in time. There are countless others. Those of you who haven't, go over and check out the podcast 80 More Things by Fenn and Julie. At any given time, you'll ask me about this case, and I guarantee you 3 or 4 different things than you heard last time will probably pop up. So that's just how much it goes on and on with this case.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I made a couple of notes as you were speaking there. First of all, yes, the Green Bay Packers. I've actually done a bit of research on this. They are actually the most popular team here in the UK, which is a shame that they've never come to London to play. Most of the other franchised teams have actually come to London to play a game in London.
Yeah.
The Packers would never do that because they are a club who are basically for the people.
Yeah.
And they are actually owned
by the residents of Wisconsin, essentially.
Yes, yeah. And also, as you say, Brett Favre, very well known, made that appearance in the There's Something About Mary, which was a great film, obviously. So yes, the most people in the UK have heard of the Packers and like the Packers because of the fact that they, just because of the fact that what they stand for. You know, Green Bay is not one of the huge big cities. It's not full of you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the term over here, but we had a situation where Roy Keane, the Manchester United captain and player a few years back, criticised his own supporters as being the prawn sandwich brigade. And I mentioned that comment to Charlie Berens, and he said, "Don't worry, there's no worry of that ever happening with Green Bay." But he does know some of the American football teams that are a little bit of the prawn sandwich brigade, you know, the supporters. Also, what I was going to say was that, of course, I know for a fact that you're very interested in the Scott Davis case. And as long as my geography
actually have an interesting thing to say, but go ahead real quick.
Isn't as bad as yours. I'm sure my geography isn't quite as bad as yours. I reckon Scott Davis' case is not based in Wisconsin.
No.
Where it's Georgia, I
Georgia,
believe.
yeah.
Georgia, which of course is the down in the south.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where Atlanta is. Atlanta, Georgia, down, you know.
Yeah, our good friend Chad Keller is from Georgia, isn't he?
Yes.
And I just.
So what's interesting about the Scott Davis case recently, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody out there, because right now, for whatever reason, that video is coming in at the 7th most watched video on my channel at this current point in time. That's right underneath my interview with FBI agent
Steve
Moore on my channel, right? So it's literally one notch below that. So that, to me, I was like, oh wow, a Scott Davis video. That, and it's an older one. It's the one Megan it's what I say, she's a very you know,
devious.
It's whatever I said about her. She's whatever it was. She's disingenuous or whatever it was. But it's one of my older. It's probably like one of the first 2 or 3 I made. But to see it getting those views, and especially that one, because that one goes into, you know, all the devious crap that she was doing, talking about the phone calls, the prove that she was the one that had the knowledge that Scott had been shot while his body was in a burning house. I mean, the logical logistics of this situation show us that there's more to this story, but Atlanta PD and everybody else ignored that and plowed forward with crap. And the DA eventually realized that. He realized that they'd screwed it up, and that's why he dropped the charges back in '96. But then a new assistant district attorney comes in 2003, you know, but the end of 2002 and then 2003 or whatever, starts digging through cold case files. And, you know, I'm not going to say nothing, but suddenly takes an interest in this cold case that involves this rich, you know, victim, you know, who comes from a very wealthy family. And I can't help but say, I can't help but wonder, was her motivation for rekindling all of this with this particular case, was it a desire for her to curry favor with a very influential and powerful family? I don't know. Because the evidence is sketchy. It's a completely circumstantial case. You can see that in the way that it's argued. Just read the closing arguments on this thing, and you can see how they're constantly tap dancing around and trying to insinuate things. They misrepresent things. At trial, they were able to misrepresent it that Scott had fed Megan the information through a phone call, but later on, the evidence was developed better, and we now know that it was Megan that called Scott, and that there were people standing next to Megan and heard her convey the information and say that David had been shot. So when you have David's own friend telling you he heard her say it to Scott on the phone, this is a problem. So it's like I said, this ADA, her name is Sheila, what's her last name? It's been a while since I was thinking about her. But anyway, she's the assistant district attorney there in Fulton County, Sheila Ross. There it is,
Right.
Sheila Ross. She took over. She brought this case up out of the cold case files, and she went after Scott. She didn't. I mean, why nobody thought? What's going on with this phone call about David being shot at 12:18? Or approximately between 12:15 and 12:30. What's the story with this? This seems like a very critical point. Nobody ever thought that. In fact, when you see that the prosecution ignored the blood that they believed was the killer's, never even put it through CODIS, ignored the prints that were on the burned Porsche, never even put that through APHIS, and you think of all the things they were ignoring, and then you have on top of that ignoring Megan's knowledge of David being shot in the head while his body was in a burning house, and it's like, I'm just happy to see that video was trending so strongly right now, being just below my interview with Steve Moore. So thank you everybody for that, because the Scott Davis case is, I feel for him right now, because the recent denial was a real kick in the teeth for them. They have developed all this evidence. They have one of the detectives in the case who is coming forward and saying, yes, there were 2 tapes and 2 transcripts. The Fulton County DA's office has been lying all of this time, saying that there's only 1 set. And the reason why that's important is because Scott has been saying all along that he said things, and there were things talked about in the interview room that aren't on the tape that made it to trial. And so his whole point in bringing this out is to say, I want the other tape that has the things that I've been saying happened on it, so that's where it is. And I kind of went on about it here a little bit, folks, but I kind of wanted to, because I'm feeling for them in that camp right now, kind of like I felt for Brendan when he got denied by the on bank. And the kick in the teeth that was, I have a very similar pit in my stomach for the Scott Davis camp at this time, but hopefully with time and with some developments that may change.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good way to move on to the next thing, is the fact that maybe if there was more media coverage of Scott Davis, I'm aware of 1 or 2 programs about it, but it's not as if we've got a situation like we have in Nina, where the killing of Michael Funk is actually going to be covered by a new either film or documentary, which is the next stage to trying to...
Docudrama, actually.
Yeah.
Make sure you get that straight for your interviews. They'll, otherwise they'll correct you.
Yep.
Learn from the American.
Cheap shot, but hey, you can have that one. as you choked on it, stop.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know. I called it a documentary, and David Starr was quick to say, well, it's actually a docudrama. And so I figured you can avoid that misstep.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You are so kind. You're so kind. So yes, the next step with so many of these wrongful convictions is to look at, to talk about the case, and then hopefully if somebody says, hold on a second, this is worth actually looking at in greater detail, then things start to happen. I suppose one does have to accept that when it comes to making a murderer, there is so much interest in the case, because we Making a Murderer has presented 20 hours worth of stuff for us to watch, and I'm sure you're like me. You'll sometimes go through past episodes of Making a Murderer and pick up on things that you hadn't even thought about at the time.
Yeah.
That there's little connections are made, aren't there?
Mm-hmm.
And you think, so that's what that was all about.
Right.
I suppose here in the UK, now you have shown an interest, obviously, in the Luke Mitchell case, which is very interesting and very sort of ongoing. It's something that we're going to look into. But yes, I would openly accept that for me, Making a Murderer certainly has opened my eyes and mind to the idea that there are these wrongful convictions out there. I think Millbilly mentioned the Michael Bell case. That's another one that you've that you've covered, haven't you? You know.
The Michael Bell
Yeah.
case I've also covered.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the way, folks, it's one thing about the $50 million bullet here, real quick, so that we don't forget. The weekend of the 19th, or basically the 17th to the 19th, go to Eagle Nation Cycles. There will be an event there. It's like a press event kind of thing. They're still open for roles of extras for filming next summer, so you can go down there and inquire about that and possibly be an extra when they're filming next summer and stuff like that. But we would like to get as much support down there that day as possible, so that there's a lot of attention on it, and people can get the idea that it's serious business. So as many people showing up there as possible is what we were really hoping for. So if you can help us out with that, thank you very much. Please do. Remember, that's the weekend, I believe, 17th to the 19th, and the exact date, I believe, is the 19th itself. That the day this will happen. So
one of the interesting things that I've actually kind of admitted to that maybe I could have done more about was during my conversations with Sheriff Herman, I never actually mentioned the Ricky Hochstetler case.
Mm-hmm.
During phone conversations. I did mention it in emails that I sent to him, but he never commented. But again, that's another example of there's no dubiety here. Debbie Hochstetler was told that don't worry, we'll get the whatever it was, the DOJ or the Department of Transport investigators to look at this. By Lenk, was it Lenk that told her?
Well, they said DCI would.
Right, DCI
would look into, or that they. Well, actually, what Lenk told her that DCI said there was nothing they could do.
Right.
And then when she eventually calls DCI about this case, she finds out that they have never been contacted at all about Ricky's case until she called right now. And I mean, at that moment when she had called. So, like, at that point, she realized, okay, well, Lenk obviously never spoke to them, and he lied to me. She puts that together by the fact that DCI is telling her that they've never been contacted regarding that case. So she puts that together. We realize, oh, there's Lenk lying to the mother of a victim. Am I shocked? No, I'm not. I'm really not. I mean, we all know he's been, he's in dirty dealings in making a murderer, so it really doesn't surprise me that he could somehow find the gumption to lie to a victim, mother of a victim. I mean, Look at what hey, look, folks, they don't care. They're so desperate to keep their little rickety, boat afloat right now that they went ahead and said publicly that they gave the grieving family animal bones just to avoid a potential due process violation. So you tell me how much they care about the victims and the victims' families, especially when they allowed they didn't take care of Gregory Allen, and he was harassing Penny Burnson for some time. Okay? They allowed her to continue to be harassed by the same guy who had brutally attacked her on the beach that day. They allowed that to continue and pretended they cared about her, and what they were doing was in her name and because it was what was right for her, when they knew that that was BS. So they have sacrificed all credibility. I mean, Manitowoc has no credibility. None. I'm sorry, there may be a new generation of Manitowoc County Sheriff's officers there, but they're still being led. It's still coming down from the top of people who were present back when all this crap was going on. So if it was allowed then, and everybody was looking the other way then, and everybody's holding the line now, then that corruption is still there. And
yeah, so, I think that's interesting. We might expand on it in a bit more detail, but certainly what I'm discovering about the Wisconsin DOJ looking into the Ken Kratz is that you had two sides of that department. One that was quite happy for it all to be hush-hushed.
Yeah.
And clearly, at one point, somebody, possibly Kevin Potter or others, JB Van Hollen himself, decided, no, enough's enough. It's time that we brought this sicko down, down.
You get the feeling, yeah, you get the feeling that they, with each new email that he sent, where he was, being pushy, questioning them about their what they think their authority is, and all those things, you get this impression that they slowly went from being indifferent to being like, you know what, this guy's a freaking nutcase. We need to do something about this guy. He is a powder keg waiting to go off. It's better that we take care of this now in a way where we're in front of it instead of waiting for it to blow up all over us. That could be the attitude they chose to take, and then that's why information gets leaked to a Mr. Ryan Foley.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big eye opener was the fact that, and fair dues, in the Luke Mitchell case, it appears that the press did not cover themselves in glory in the way that they handled this Mitchell Jody Jones case, and certainly not in Wisconsin, where the majority of the journalists there seem to be on the payroll of the state and are simply propaganda merchants. They simply want to put forward what the state has to say. I mean, there aren't many. There's not many John Farracks around, are there?
There's less and less.
And he was certainly somebody that looked into the Ricky Hochstetler case in some detail.
Right.
But there does seem to be a shortage of people that look at. I mean, a classic example, Mike Holbach. Did the press ever go to the police and say, you need to listen to this? This is a huge red flag. Imagine if, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if instead of Teresa Holbach went missing, let's imagine it was Barb that went missing, and Stephen Avery in an interview said, "Oh, well, she's still a missing person." Imagine Steve Avery had said, "Oh, well, the grieving process could last days, weeks, years."
Right.
What would have happened?
They would have immediately, they would have immediately have hung him and crucified him on that statement.
Exactly. So people sometimes go on at me and say, "Oh, well, you have to give him a bit of leeway because blah blah blah." Why? if the roles were reversed, it would be Stephen Avery that was being harangued by the press. But there was something else I was gonna point out. Yes. When I went to Amsterdam, I was lucky enough to have my question answered as the first question answered by Jerry Buting and David Rudolph. And I think you know what that question was. Or would you like me to remind you?
Yeah, remind me. I don't remember what it was, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. The question was simply this. Because obviously you've got David Rudolph from The Staircase, Jerry Buting from Making a Murderer. Who is the more unethical, in other words, the worst prosecutor? Jim Harding or Kenneth Kratz?
Right.
No. I admired.
Has Ken Kratz ever dug up a dead body 4 states away and drove it on down the highway to the jurisdiction where he had control of the coroner? Has he ever done? I don't know. If he's never done that, then it's a pretty close race. Just because of that.
It was for me. The big problem is the fact that.
But they're both pretty bad.
Yeah, when we look at Ken Kratz, I know, but I was shocked when I saw Making a Murderer.
By the way, did you see that the welcome mat from the video I did earlier today that Winston brings in at the end where it says "Home Sweat Home"? I was thinking, that would be a perfect housewarming gift for the Kratzes right there. We gotta think. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just the fact that if it was Ken Kratz and he was a inverted commas normal prosecutor that was saying these things and carrying on the way he did, the press conference, clearly getting, we're discovering more and more about the link between Kaczynski and Kratz. That they were working together along with O'Kelly. We've even got emails looking at, for example, Ken Kratz trying to threaten the attorney for Jodie because she didn't want
Right.
Wiegert and Fassbender talking to her. It's bad enough if a normal attorney had done that, but it makes more sense the way that he was when you look at the whole of the sexting scandal. When he would have you believe that it was to do with the fact that he was on these drugs, and it was simply something that happened just a couple of months in 2009. That only happened in September 2009. It was a one-off.
I would argue that all of those desires to dominate and do all the things that he did, that they are there. And obviously those drugs loosened his control and allowed him to act them out. So he can say it's the drugs. I say, no, it's you, but the drugs weakened your inhibitions and allowed you to somehow believe that it was acceptable for you to do that.
Well, hold on a sec. I think that when we look at the OLR decision, Supreme Court decision, he claims that he was on all these drugs. He has provided no evidence whatsoever that he was ever on. Yeah. And yet, what we do have one of his victims.
So many lawyers like him are, but
Yeah, but one of his victims admitting that she was addicted to prescription drugs.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, he was representing some people that were not necessarily the upper crust. The some of the crime. Well, you're dealing with situations with battered women where they're trying to get away from abusive, boyfriends and or husbands, and that sort of thing. And a lot of Wisconsin is low income, and so therefore that generally can tend to lead to a kind of a more lowbrow situation where things aren't as eloquent as they would be in the upper crust. You know what I mean? I don't know, but so they're dealing with people that probably live in apartments or trailers, or they're struggling to get by as it is. They have a great deal of stress in their lives, and so then they got to fighting and things blew up or whatever, and then it got violent, then it got serious. That's when the state had to get involved, and that's probably what we're dealing with a couple of these girls that Ken Kratz tried to victimize, because the threat was he could just let it go, and then those girls would then, after seeking to do something about the abusive person in their life, would suddenly be left flat and with nowhere to go. And that was a scary prospect. So that's why him acting the way he did was so bad. And I loved the way he got chastised by the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association, where they were like, you took information we gave you, and you contacted this girl for your own self-gain. You have caused... Who knows if any other victims will now come forward and give us that information to help them in the future, thanks to you, dingus. You're an idiot. I'm paraphrasing, but dude, that's what they're basically telling him. They're just like, you abused confidential information. You're anyway, and he's just like, it doesn't faze him. He's like, nope, no, it's not like that. It's whatever, and he'll just argue, spin.
Yeah. But I would maintain Fox chicken house. But anyway, listen. What I did mean to ask you was that obviously on your Doctor Who channel, you've done a little bit about a brilliant Scottish comedy TV series called Still Game, and it is a brilliant comedy series. And every year people go along and they have a live Still Game. Yeah, they actually do it at the this SSEC or whatever it is. It's the big conference centre in Glasgow, and it's very, very popular, obviously. Another one well worth watching, besides Still Game, would of course be Rab C. Nesbitt.
Right.
You know, but you're on about what was the fellow's name? Bletcher.
Batchy.
Batchy. Yeah, you know.
Batchy is a Scottish YouTuber. He's about 95,000 subscribers. He was in a race with somebody to get to 100,000. Anyway, he's a pretty popular guy. He's pretty funny. He's got, you know, it's all about the patter. You know, patter. You know, the way the Scots say it, because like when you got two T's in the middle of the word, you don't say them. You hiccup instead. So, anyways, I'm just kidding, but. You know what I mean, right? You know what I'm saying, there, right? But, so, anyways, it's all about that with Batchy, and so that's why he gets into Still Game, because Jack and Victor are the two main characters, and even some of the peripheral buddies that hang around, you know, there in Craigline are really, really funny. There's a lot of just verbal sparring back and forth, you know, kind of stuff that's really, really funny. It's a great show. So, my bone to pick with Batchy was that he had said, we had nothing in America. He kind of was saying everything was like, oh, let's have a party, and like everything was unrealistic or whatever. I was like, oh, I have a bone to pick with that, because Married with Children is for me probably one of the greatest shows of all time, and I mean it's like, and it is one of the greatest shows of all time because it was ahead of its time. It took an approach that no show really previously had taken. It was taking a rather, you know, less than flattering look at the lifestyle of the middle American class family, you know, and or maybe even into the lower middle class, American middle class family. But it was doing it in a kind of an honest way, but in a way that was still humorous, and that could be appreciated. And it was completely different, and it was brilliant. I think it ran for 11 seasons. I mean, the first 9 seasons were the best. The final 2 seasons were just, you know, it was in its dying throes, and every episode was a gimmick. But it still had its moments. It was still funny. But the first 9 seasons, though, I mean, were just brilliant. I mean, even as the neighbors changed, as Steve left and Jefferson comes in, and, you know, all those sort of things. I mean, it was just a great, great show. And so I had this bone to pick with him. I'm like, well, it's just as irreverent as, you know, the humor in your patter. You know what I mean? It's like, and so I felt I had to call it to his attention. So, you know, there you go.
Yeah, I think
4 touchdowns in 1 game, Sharon says. Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I watched that program, and yes, maybe to a certain extent, some of these programs, I suppose they should learn from Fawlty Towers. You know, if you've only ever done, what was it, in Fawlty Towers, there's only ever nine of them ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's you know, there was like 1 series, wasn't there? That was it. That was it. You know, you and you don't get any more. So sometimes you know, it's a good idea to, you know, not to keep flogging something. What I was going to ask, though, was the fact that, you know, America is made up of 50 states, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. With your knowledge of geography, okay. And I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, because I'm gonna nip to the little room.
Oh, yeah.
And when I come back, I want an answer to these 2 questions, okay? And these 2 questions are: 1, Wisconsin and Scotland, which is the bigger population, and which is the bigger service area? Now you've got the 2 minutes it takes me to come back to everybody to give him the answer, or if he can't figure it out himself. I mean, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
All in the Family. Yeah, actually, you know what? All in the Family was another one. That's a good point, Rhonda. That's actually another one. Oh, Scooby was saying All in the Family as well. Yeah. Dr. Pepper time. Yeah. Well, I don't know the populations, and I don't know the square footage of each one, and I'm not about to look it up.
All I can say to Gabriel McGrath, you're the lucky one. Finally made the live. Now there is silent. You are so lucky. Can I have a guess?
So Wisconsin has more people.
Yes. By how many?
I don't know.
Well, Scotland is 5.
I took the over. What do you want?
Yeah, Scotland is 5.4 million, whereas Wisconsin is 5.8 million. And which is the biggest surface area?
Oh.
Physically, which is the bigger country?
I know.
Scotland.
I know.
Stick a chorizo in it. What is it you
I
said?
don't know. I'm gonna say.
What's with that zucchini thing you keep sending me?
What, you mean the eggplant?
Is that what it is?
It's because you're a Bobby. Anyway. So I'm gonna say Scotland's bigger, surface-wise.
It's less than half the size of Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, if you want the figures, as I say, it's 5.4 million for Scotland, 5.8 million for Wisconsin. Scotland is 31,000 square miles. Wisconsin is 65.5 thousand square miles.
Mm-hmm.
What the point obviously I'm trying to make is the fact that here in Scotland you have a program like Still Game.
Yeah.
Everybody relates to that. It's just
Right.
It's everybody loves it because it's to do with Ur people.
Right. Yes. Right there. Yeah.
I
mean, Craigline is a fictional place in Glasgow, but
everybody
it's
relates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still Glasgow. So
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as Charlie Bones. It's everybody in Wisconsin, or a lot of people will relate to Charlie Bones. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people will relate to that. And I think, in fairness, when it comes to some of the, dare I say it, the people that have got a more cosmopolitan point of view when they're making up their series, such as you say, Married with Children. It's they are sort of, shall we say, pampering to a wider audience. I mean,
yeah, they were cashing in on a I think on a public that was tired of BS. They were tired of having everybody saying everything's okay, it's all okay, don't worry about it. And Married with Children just seemed honest. Somebody else brought up another one, by the way, All in the Family, actually back from the 70s. All in the Family, another one that was just very similar to the way Married with Children was, because it was taking a very, very honest look at, like I said, middle to lower middle class American family, putting that funny spin on some of the tragic nature of being not among the not among the haves, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that one of the most famous comedy programs of all time was actually set in Wisconsin. Happy Days.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why they've got that figure of the Fonz, haven't they?
Yeah.
Is he in
Hey.
Milwaukee?
I believe that's what it was, Milwaukee. Yeah.
Yeah. I understood that the actual diner was actually in Kenosha.
It could be. I don't know. I
I
don't know
think,
that
I think,
much about it, honestly.
but I mean,
I know that the term "jump the shark" comes from that TV show because literally they say the moment that Fonzie jumped the shark in a lake on skis, that was the moment that Happy Days had hit its peak and started its downward trend. And so that's like how they measure, like, now every show when a show jumps the shark. And so they try to track when a show is declining. But they use that term now strictly because of Happy Days. It's coined from that scene of Fonzie jumping the shark. Because you get it. I mean, the problems with it. A shark, a freshwater lake, really? I mean, you know what I mean? So anyways, it just was so ridiculous and gimmicky that it was like the beginning of the end.
yeah. I mean, for me, it's very easy, isn't it, to look at stuff that we're familiar with and not look back very far. But for me, the comedy genius number one for me has always been Laurel and Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they.
I think they're funny. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched them, but they are. Yeah.
And then if you want sheer wit, Phil Silver's in Sergeant Bilko.
I haven't seen
it. You are seriously missing out.
Yeah.
What I would agree with you there is something that I have mentioned before. For us in Scotland, sarcasm, taking the piss. It's our national sport. It's what we do all the time.
Right.
You know that to be the truth because that's basically what we have been doing back and forth for how many years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's
gotten to the point of being years now. Wow. Time flies when the havering is abound. Anyway, no. Yeah, I was saying that yeah, it does. It's as you say, it's like the national pastime, and that sort of thing. The Scots have a thicker skin. It takes more. It takes more to kind of get under your guys' skin because you're all constantly just already, taking the piss out of each other. So it's like by default, you guys have a thicker skin about it, and you don't get set off or upset by the more trivial things. Not to say that you guys don't get upset or pissed off. Obviously, we all do. But I'm just saying on a peripheral level, you guys have a much thicker skin, I think, because you guys are just conditioning yourselves on a daily basis, being Scottish, and acting, and just, poking at people, prodding at people, and taking the piss. So,
yeah. The other thing is that. If, for example, you could within Scotland, if you were from one town and you were say in a bar and your mates were taking the mick out of you for something, if somebody say from another town, if they started taking the mick out of you, all your mates from your town would immediately join in. There's a camaraderie there. I mean, here's an interesting thing. The latest Manitowoc Minute was Manitowoc is the worst city in Wisconsin.
Have you ever been to Beloit?
Yeah, unless you drove me through there, no, I can't.
So. Me either.
I don't think so.
No, I just had to say it because I watched the video. Anyway, sorry.
What's wrong with Beloit?
No, in the comment section, people were like, "Oh, what's so wrong?" No, have you ever been to Beloit?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Anyway.
But
It was just a little ongoing joke in his, you know.
yeah. I mean, but the point is that here in the UK, a while back, we had the 50 worst places to live in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them was 20 miles down the road in Hoyk,
Hoik.
which is spelled Hawawick.
Yeah.
Hawawick, but it's pronounced Hoyk.
And where did the two twats come in?
Well, there's definitely one in Shetland. There's one in Shetland. I've sent you the A to Z of Shetland, and
Only in
that's
Scotland can you have two
yeah,
places.
yeah, that's right. But the point is that when Hoyk was voted one of the worst places to live in Scotland, in the UK, there's no doubt that people from like Melrose and Gala and Selkirk and Jedburgh, they would have all have agreed with, they would have all have voted for Hoyk because it's one of these ongoing jokes here in the borders.
Mm-hmm.
But see if there was a load of people from the borders down south and somebody was to start picking on the Hoyk guy,
Mm-hmm.
everybody else would rally around them. You know,
Right.
yes, there's this take the mick out of them, and yes, it's almost.
Right. It's like what you are with your brothers. You know?
Yeah,
You can
like
talk shit on them. You can give them give them noogies. You can, but if somebody else does it, then that ain't happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's almost like when you when I remember as a kid, when a girl was maybe give me the odd comment, I would take that as a word of endearment because it meant that they actually liked you. The fact that they would make a comment towards you,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's what it's. I'm sure that's partly what it is. As for Manitowoc being the worst
Right.
city in Wisconsin, I can't help thinking that yes, some of it is to do with the fact that there was one brilliant comment, and it was that, well, if I ever want to be made a murderer, I know where I'm going to go.
I commented on his video and I basically kind of was like, hey Charlie, I go, unfortunately Manitowoc is going to be a great embarrassment to your state. I go, and Nina's lining up to be second. So and I would love for Charlie to really take a look at some of the issues. I mean, I know he's somewhat aware of the situation with making a murderer, but I think he is, like a lot of people there, probably just wants to keep the blinders on. That's truly what I feel, and I don't hold it against him. I still like Charlie, but that's I think where he stands.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think as well. Unlike some people, he admits the fact that he hasn't. He doesn't know much about the case. He's only watched what everybody else has, and one wonders if he's even watched all 20 episodes of Making a Murderer.
I don't know if he's checked out season 2. Yeah,
exactly.
You would think if he did, he would have come up with another funny bit, because I'll be honest, the comedy skit that he did with whoever he made that with the making a husband. I mean, that was freaking brilliant. That was freaking hilarious. And having the experts analyzing what was being said, like in the background of while it's all happening. Oh my god, that thing was brilliant. Every time she says "hun," what she really means is "bitch." So it's like she's like, "Okay, hun, so do you understand that now, hun?" So it's like he's like, "Oh, basically what she just said was like, bitch. Do you understand now, bitch?" That video is hilarious. So, but he clearly understood what was going on with Brendan's confession, or somebody did, whoever wrote that. And maybe he's just an actor that got brought on board and he didn't have to do much thinking. But I don't know.
Can I just quickly do a little bit of this? I don't know if everybody can see that.
Ah, there it is.
Oh, that's it. There we go.
Keep her moving.
Can You see what it says? It says to Paul on the
On the
squeeze
squeeze
box,
box. Keep
keep
her
her
moving.
moving.
Yeah.
And then it's got, and I can hardly see what it's. It must be on this.
On the other side where he signed it there, you mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to so that it lines up. I can't get it to. Yeah, he signed it, Charlie. Yeah, there you go.
Go Packers and F the Bears.
F the Bears. And that's one of my prized possessions. That's Charlie Bones of the Manitowoc Minute, and I'm sure you realise that the state flag here is not the official Wisconsin state flag.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Right. Oh no, that's Charlie's version. Yes.
I've never been to see Charlie Bones. I do want to. In fact, what I would really like to do would be to see him come to Scotland sometime, to come to the Edinburgh Festival, because the Edinburgh Festival, of course, is actually the biggest in the world when it comes to people appearing in theatres, all that kind of stuff. I think even over there in Crunch Island, they've heard of the Edinburgh Festival. No?
You keep saying over there. Anyway.
Oh dear, oh dear. So anyway, yeah, what I've also put down, of course, Charlie Chaplin was one of the first.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things that I can't remember, were you recording when I first mentioned it? The latest Netflix film is My Name is Dolomite. Dolomite. Absolutely brilliant. Well worth a watch.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting when he goes to, him and a few mates, they go to the cinema and they watch a film, and they're the only black guys in the audience, and the white sense of humor they do not get at all. They're saying,
Right.
is this funny? And at the same time, and then later on in the film, when they've produced their film, and people are going, is
Different
this serious?
strokes for different folks.
Exactly, so what I would also point out is that when it comes to probably, we're talking about Lon and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin. For me, one of the greatest comedies of all time, comedy films, is probably our favourite, The Big Lebowski.
Mm-hmm.
Where I do think that sometimes I do get a little bit annoyed with America is when they start taking stuff like Tom Hanks did his version of The Lady Killers, which was a classic Ealing comedy. Never are you going to be able to replicate something as good as the original version that had Alec Guinness.
I agree with you 100%. Hollywood has gotten extremely lazy. It's ridiculous at this point. They don't seem to want to make anything original. Everything is a remake of older movies. I mean, how many times have they remade Batman now? How many times have they remade Ghostbusters? I mean, some things are going on their third and fourth remake now, especially when it comes to comic book movies, about comic book heroes and stuff like that. And I mean, it's just getting so ridiculous where Hollywood is basically saying, we don't want to worry about original content. We know this subject matter will draw people and put their butts in seats, so that's what we'll do.
Yeah. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Sharon Sunshine. Peter Sellers and the other one, Herbert Lom.
Peter Sellers is great. I love him.
Yeah.
He's absolutely brilliant in Doctor Strangelove, How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb. He plays 3 different roles in it, and he's brilliant.
Well, you should watch the original Lady Killers, but also things like the Americans.
I also want to say W.C. Fields, now that you brought up Peter Sellers. W.C. Fields, one of my dad's favorites, and he is. I love W.C. Fields. Very funny comedian. But.
No, it was just that the Americans have done their version of things like The Italian Job and Get Carter.
Yeah. I'm sure.
You know, it's as you say, I suppose it in a way it can be quite tricky for them to try and strike the balance between, you know, if they felt they that a certain um, series of films, that there weren't enough of them. You know, like I was saying, there was only 9 Faulty Towers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure that you know, some people would be sort of saying, you know, they sure they could have done more, but it's I suppose how far do you milk it is would be my question. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
for me, you know, something like The Big Lebowski, it was just a complete one off. I mean, the storyline
I
is
thought I heard something about their maybe working on a sequel for it now or something possibly. I thought I heard. I could be wrong, but I thought I heard maybe something like that.
well, I mean, but the thing is, it's a little bit like, you know, I remember the very first gig I ever did, and I got a right telling off of my uncle Chris. He's the keyboard player in the Fortunes back in the '60s, and it was him that actually came to pick me up from the gig. And the gig was supposed to finish at midnight, and I went on for another 20 minutes. And Chris, my uncle Chris, was quite firm with me. He said, "Look, Paul, you know, whatever you do, don't if it's whatever time it finishes, finish. You know, if they want you back for more, if they're shouting more and all this kind of stuff, tell them fine. You know, I'll do. You know, I'm the next. If you want me back, I'll come back. But that's when you get the more. It's not now sort of thing. You know."
Right. Oh, okay. Right.
So if
It puts a more definitive value on your playing, I would imagine. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, dude, I've kept you long enough, and it's getting
All right. Yeah.
quarter to midnight here. We've just done over the hour.
Been well over an hour actually because I started recording before you started broadcasting. So, but yes, it's been a bit. I think we've covered everything aptly though.
Yeah, as I say, I think we can look forward. I think to this $50 million bullet.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
My hope is for it to be popular enough that we get everybody to have the Wisconsin again moment.
Yeah,
That's what we really want. That's what I'm really hoping for with $50 million bullet. So that's why I want to make sure it's a success. That's why I want to promote it. That's why I want to have as many of us helping to support it and everything, particularly going out there on the weekend of the 18th and 19th to Eagle Nation Cycles because they're going to be having a press day there. So help out with things like that. But like I said, I can't say it enough. I believe if we can get a lot of people who have watched Making a Murderer but never maybe got into the documents, never went in further like a lot of us have, if they come back and see the $50 million bullet and have the Wisconsin again moment, that could change things. And that could bring a lot more interest, and the kind of interest that won't be fleeting, okay, as it sometimes is right now. Because obviously, right after MAM1 came out, we had a huge amount of interest, but that bled off. And then MAM2 came out, and we had a resurgence of interest, and that's kind of, again, has kind of bled off. And so now we wait for the filings, and then it gets interesting every time something interesting happens. Every time we have some jack-off in prison claiming that he committed the murder, talking about how he was popping pills and swigging brandy while he was doing it, all undetected on the Avery property somehow. Anyway, so, you know, all these different developments we get, whether they be ridiculous or whether they be court filings that should be taken seriously. But anyways, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you're right. The only thing I would say about Making a Murderer, it is unique. It's the story itself is unique. You know, the story of Stephen Avery, but also the fact that we've got those 20 hours worth of documentary to get through, and that in itself is pretty unique. You know, even The Staircase only runs to 13 episodes, and apparently Faulty Towers is 12 episodes. So, you know, it's still a very, very short season. You know, series of episodes of Fawlty Towers. Yeah, it's you know, as I said in one of my videos, it's not as if we wake up every morning thinking, today, now what can we do to further undermine local government in Wisconsin? That is not
Yeah.
what we're thinking, is it? You know,
No.
it's very much a case of what the hell
did you do to that 16-year-old kid?
Yeah.
And look at this, and look at what you did to his uncle previously. How am I supposed to be assured that that didn't happen again?
Exactly. So. You know, just. So I'm looking forward to hopefully having a chat with David Starr, Dan Davis, Julie, and Fenn, and also their next guest on 80 More Things is Mitch. Yep. So I've been in contact with Mitch, and so hopefully we'll get Mitch on at some point, some point soon. The elusive Chad Keller is proving very elusive, although he has just, and I believe it's coming out on Monday. Tomorrow is the House of Mystery. He's been on there a couple of times, and on House of Mystery previously on the to do with the Avery case were Ken Kratz and Sean Reck just within the last week or so, as far as I can tell. Yeah. So House of Mystery, well worth having a listen to. Yeah. I think that's some guys over in Seattle. Is that right?
I'm not sure. Although I would say that one thing as we're going out here is that recently, folks, Mindshock did another video about the Avery case and stuff, and pointed out some very interesting and odd, bizarre things and connections in the history in Manitowoc there. So those who haven't gone and checked out Mindshock's most recent thing, maybe go over and check it out. I'm not saying it's anything case changing. Well, I'm not saying that there definitely is. All I'm saying is that there's some interesting bits of history thrown into that video. That's just I just find are, even if they end up being just trivia, I think are interesting. So you might want to go check that out.
Yes, Mitch comes under the name of Team Stockdale, but I'm sure he's on Twitter. Well, I know he's on Twitter quite a lot.
Well, Stockdale is
Team Stockdale.
Team Stockdale. That's interesting.
Yeah,
that would be right. That would be on the way from where I was earlier this week in San Jose.
when you sailed down the coast on the Guppy with a crew well behaved.
You know, Crunchberry Vineyards is in Scotland, dude. I know you haver and you haver, but you know, anyways,
it's a national sport.
I know, right? The patter. It's the patter.
Well, you see, that's
look. I'll put it this way: you guys never make a T sound as clearly as you do when you say shite. When you guys, any other word, it's like you almost try to remove the T sound. But when you say shite, that T comes ringing out like a church bell, man. You can completely hear that T. Anyways, I'm having some fun with you.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. If you want to sound American,
yeah, just
pronounce the word water by changing the T to a D. Water.
Nah. You're going to start preaching me about T-sound, huh? Okay.
I'm not going to... perish the thought. The patter thing, that's to me, that's more of a Londoner thing. The Londoners tend to be very lazy. What you'll find in Scotland...
I listen to Batchy, and it's like anything with T's in the middle, it's like it's not a T sound, it's just like a sound. It's just like a, you know, it's like an absence of the T sound. It's weird. Anyway.
No, I would definitely. I mean, for us, I suppose, in Scotland, you know, the various sort of dialects are huge to us, but obviously they would be
Sure.
to Americans. You know, you can immediately recognise where somebody is from by the way you speak. I'm sure that you know a lot of people say, "Oh, you're from California."
Right. But
They can,
a lot of people could probably tell that, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
somebody from Texas has a pretty distinctive
yeah,
Texas drawl.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
who's, say from the Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia's, basically southeast United States, they tend to have a pretty particular way of talking.
yeah,
Obviously, as you move up to, you get to New England, you get to like Boston and Massachusetts.
yeah,
That state, they have a complete like dialect. I don't know. It's almost like Scotland there, but they have a very unique accent, and they have a they very much are very very intensely care about their culture and folk and their history there in a way that I don't see with a lot of other places in the U.S., which I find interesting. So, good on you, Bostonites. Obviously, and then you get up to New York, completely different accent from just those two places, which are really close to each other, really, but completely different accents in the way that people talk. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I know like people in Glasgow talk a little bit different than the people from Edinburgh. I know, and then as you get to the, outskirt cities or suburbs of these places, you probably even get some more interesting dialects. Obviously, you end up in Orkney, in the Orkneys or whatever, you probably even get some more interesting dialects, and as you move around Scotland. So, I mean, that would make sense because obviously that's the way it is everywhere. So.
yeah. You what you will find is you'll get the shall we say the sort of slightly posher parts of Glasgow and Edinburgh, where they do tend to be more articulate, and as you say, you'll tend to get people who their dialect is slightly lazy. For example, in here in Galashiels, I remember my wife, telling both daughters, do not speak like that, because you're just, you're given the, in effect saying, that I'm just a lazy talker by using the local slang words, which is fair enough.
Well, Badgie makes the argument that he feels that by doing that, talking that way, like, like with patter, the way he says patter, he feels that he's highlighting the word. I am not so sure I'm buying that line because I'm thinking highlight. I mean, you're removing part of the sound of the word of the way it sounds, and I agree with you. It sounds more like lazy than what Batchy says that he's highlighting. That if anything, it's highlighting. No, it's funny because, and the reason why this subject comes up for Batchy is because obviously his accent is very thick, and so sometimes when he gets rolling, and he gets to talking, and he's getting kind of excited. Holy moly! I literally had my girlfriend sitting behind me one time when he got on to a strong one where he was on it. He was talking about something that he was really intense about, and he was just flowing and rolling, and it was coming out so quick, so fast, and so much. My girlfriend's like, "Can you even understand a word he's saying?" And I was like, I was following him, but I was having to really pay attention to him to really catch it all because he has a real deep accent. Sometimes it's just like, ooh. So.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you remember me once saying about Mr. Richard Boyd. I've tried to watch some of his videos, and I cannot make out what he said. I honestly,
sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
I listen for a minute, and I'm like, I'm lost, and it's like there's no point rewinding it. But one final question, I do like the accent of Nancy Grace. Where is she from?
She's from South Carolina, so
is she?
That's like the Georgia, southern belle type of,
Yeah. Did you ever watch Wacky Races? She reminds me of Penelope Pitstop.
Penelope Pitstop. Yeah, I used to watch that show when I was a kid with George of the Jungle and Tom Slick and all that. Anyway,
Probably not everything made its way across the
maybe not everything, but
from Crotch Island, So,
but it had Snidely in it, right? The dog.
yes. Oh yeah, yeah. So, Muttley.
I think here it was Snively. I don't know. Anyway, who knows?
Oh right.
Or maybe I'm thinking of two different cartoons too. But anyway.
But you're
what?
Oh no, dude! You are the expert when it comes to cartoons.
Ah. Okay, there. What was your favorite one? The Captain Pugwash, right?
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's Paul's Captain Crunch, folks. That's his. Aye, Captain. Okay, so that concludes my chat with Mr. Capaldi. I had a good time talking with him. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about the idea of getting the Home Sweat Home welcome mat for the Kratzes. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that. So, but anyways, had a great time talking to Paul. We even talked about something else that you don't see in this video, but it's something that I am finding particularly interesting and fascinating at the moment, and that is the subject of Scottish independence, which is becoming a conversation topic again due to things. Anyway, I find the whole thing interesting and have been watching kind of what's going on without having any opinion of it myself, and so it's been interesting. If you guys want to see, if you haven't already seen, the live on, that was on Paul Capaldi's channel, you want to see what Mr. Capaldi and I were talking about in terms of Scottish independence, you can go over to my other channel, the Erekose on Doctor Who, and you can type that in and it'll pop up, and just find the video I did with Paul uploaded today, and you'll see it. So, all right, for those of you who haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.